Welcome to Ask Caleffi, the podcast that dives into real-life problems that plumbing and HVAC technicians face in the field. We're your hosts from the Caleffi Tech Support Team. I'm Greg Tubbs.
And I'm Dan Furcus. Welcome. We look forward to sharing some stories from our tech calls and using our background and expertise to make your days a little easier.
Hey there, welcome back. Here we are, another episode of the Ask Caleffi podcast. How we doing, Dan?
We're doing good. Yeah, welcome back, everybody.
What do we got cooking today?
Oh, today we're excited. We got a guest in the studio here. We got Cody Mack, our training and education manager. He's our official whiz kid here at Caleffi.
Yeah, that's a title I don't deserve.
He is the dynamo of donut testing around here.
I am a connoisseur of donuts. I will agree with that. Whiz kid, I think, is a little outside my pay range. But no, thanks for having me, guys. No, this is a lot of fun. I appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, we're happy you joined us.
So, 5 things we all need to know. That's a series that we have out.
Yeah, you're right, Greg. Yeah, we started an interesting training initiative. As time goes on and people are more accustomed to social media, their attention spans seemingly get smaller and smaller. And I'm looking at you, Greg.
I know. Well, shiny thing.
Shiny. Oh, squirrel. But yeah, so we have some great initiatives like Coffee with Caleffi, which go into great detail and a lot of information and everything like that. And we wanted to really narrow it down and hit like the high notes and just be straight and to the point and everything like that. And that's where we came up with the 5 things you need to know. And again, wide range of topics. We've got a number of them on our YouTube channel. They're on all of our social medias as well. And it's been going really well so far.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
It's a down and dirty educational, kind of like us.
Yeah, it kind of hits the high points, hits the important key factors on certain topics.
Sure. Talking Recirc creep today, aren't we?
Yeah, this was one of my first ones that we did. It was the 5 things you need to know about why Recirc creep occurs. And Recirc creep is something that most plumbers have probably experienced, although they probably don't even know how to actually put a name on it or how to define it. And they probably just thought it was a bad mixing valve in a lot of cases. I know we take some calls like that where they think it's a bad mixing valve. Yeah.
Certainly, we get a lot of calls on that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, plenty of them.
But yeah, no, it's a big thing, and Recirc creep it can affect everybody. It can be dangerous. It's definitely something that you want to address, and yeah, I think this particular episode was a great one in the fact that it hit all those real high notes, and again, we do have more in depth and more detailed stuff with Coffee with Caleffi as well.
Right. Yeah. Again, topic we get calls on a lot, and plumbers, a lot of them don't even know why it's occurring or what's occurring.
Yeah. For sure. And that's the thing. And so like what actually is Recirc creep? Recirc creep is a scenario that can actually happen when you have a recirculation system on a domestic hot water supply system or domestic hot water distribution system. And then you've got a mixing valve involved as well. And it's kind of like this perfect storm of specific things that need to happen in order for Recirc creep to occur. But the idea is that you've got a mixing valve, you've got a recirc system, and the issue with, and I shouldn't even call it an issue, but it's something that you need to be aware of. I'll call it a limitation with a lot of thermostatic mixing valves, especially, is that they don't have the ability to completely close off one side or the other, whether it be hot or cold. And so the problem occurs in the fact that when you bring your recirc back and you tie it back into the domestic hot water supply or the domestic hot water source, if that mixing valve doesn't have the ability to completely close off that hot side, you could actually be adding more heat to the loop than what the loop is giving off in heat loss throughout the building and whatnot. And so when you add more heat to the loop than what the loop is giving off and there's no demand from the fixtures, you could actually have that whole distribution line and your recirc line creep up. That's the word creep we talked about, to whatever the storage tank temperature is. And that's what the real big problem is, because if you're storing at 150 or 160, somebody's going to get scalded.
And that's going to occur more at a time where you have a low use, like maybe the middle of the night, and
100%.
Or a system that just has, their dead legs because, say, it's a hotel that's not being used or occupied.
Yeah, right. and that's the other thing too is you talk about symptoms, like again, I mentioned it before, a lot of plumbers and guys have probably experienced it, but they didn't know how to really put a defined name on it. And so the kind of the symptoms that you're going to run into, like Dan said, the fact is that when you have little to no demand from your fixtures, like an overnight period of 8, 9, 10 hours or whatever, or if it's a commercial building unoccupied for 12 hours at a crack, you're going to come in the morning and whoever opens up that first faucet is going to get some just absolutely smoking hot water, and then the mixing valve and everything's going to work just fine the rest of the day. And so obviously they think, well, it's not controlling the temperature. It must be a bad mixing valve. Sure. But in all reality, it's just a kind of a thing with ASSE 1017 is that it does not require a complete shutoff on either side in order to pass an ASSE 1017 certification. So
right,
yeah. So the first person comes on, does the initial purge, maybe gets scalded, and that's where the problem lies.
Yeah, that's when the call comes in.
Yeah, exactly, and it's especially important too. You get into a lot of healthcare facilities, nursing homes, elderly care facilities. Whatever you want to call them. Those people. I mean, they get scalded, and it's one thing to get scalded, but then you have all the complications from third-degree burns and things like that, infections and things. I mean, people can literally die from getting scalded.
Yeah, it becomes a real liability issue
for sure.
Lawsuits ensue.
Yeah, nobody wants a lawyer coming after them. So it's a big thing. We talk about it pretty regularly. So again, recirc creep is something that you don't want to happen, and there's definitely some ways to take care of it. There's different piping methods and things like that we describe in our technical brochures. You guys probably get calls about it all the time too.
All the time.
Yeah, good piping practices to help prevent that.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, the one of the biggest things that we run into is that if you've got a thermostatic mixing valve like that cannot completely close off the hot side or the cold side, basically when you've got no demand and your recirc is still running, a lot of people think like, oh my gosh, I can just put an aquastat on there, like that would fix everything, and really it solves one problem while creating other problems.
Right.
And we have this conversation a lot too. The fact is that
you're not meeting a minimum somewhere.
Exactly. Yeah. So that aquastat, if you set it to 120 or whatever the case may be, it's going to shut down the recirc, and creep's not going to happen. That's great. But now all of a sudden you've got a 2-inch mixing valve that has a minimum flow requirement of 8 gallons per minute, and you've got no flow going through it, which is going to cause a lot of issues, because when you're not meeting minimum flows, then that mixing valve is bouncing all over the place because it's not getting a good read on mixed temperature, because it's not getting enough turbulence inside the valve body.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, happens quite a bit.
We see a lot of them pipe directly with the recirc lines, pipe directly back to the tank, not even pipe back to the mixing valve.
So you're just
that's escalating that problem.
Yeah, you're escalating it.
One, you're not meeting your minimum flows, and two, you're pushing that elevated hot water up and past that hot side of that mixing valve.
Yeah. In a lot of cases, if you don't have a mixing valve on your domestic hot water source, whether it be a storage tank or whatever the case may be, bringing back a recirc is really easy. You just tie it back into the cold inlet to the domestic hot water source. Some people use a tapping on the tank, whether it be in the mid-range on the tank or even at the drain at the bottom. But when you add a mixing valve into this scenario, that's where things really start to get a little bit dicey, and you got to make sure that you're piping it properly. And so, yeah, like Dan said, when you're doing that, in reality, what you need to be doing is taking that recirc and splitting it, and one actually goes to the tank and one goes to the mixing valve at the cold inlet. And it's a little bit hard to describe via podcast, obviously.
Right, exactly.
I could probably spend an hour doing that, but I think a great place to look is going to be our technical brochure, or go to the 5 things you need to know about video and watch it. There's a good diagram in there.
Yeah, we have great diagrams, and we've even sent them off many a time to guys that, I don't have internet, or for whatever reason, we'll text it to them or get it to them one way or another.
Yeah, just referring back to that installation instructions, you'll see that diagram in there. And you're right. You talk about splitting it back to the mixing valve, and you need to do that to make up your minimum flow rate. But you look at our smaller valve, like our 521 series, where you have a 1 GPM minimum flow rate. Guys can get away with not tying back to the mixing valve, and they'll meet their 1 GPM minimum flow rate, and they won't have an issue. But that's where they really get that recirc creep, is because you're pushing past that hot side of that valve.
Right, and that valve doesn't close off 100%.
Nope, exactly.
But I think the biggest thing to think about here is and we've taken calls like this before too, and I've probably been I've probably done it myself too, for that matter. You think it's a bad mixing valve, you replace the mixing valve, and then all of a sudden the new one does the same thing.
Imagine that.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
I know. So you replace it a second time because the first, it must be a bad batch or something like that.
Sure.
Of course. But don't hesitate to call us, because it's one of those things where it might be not be a phenomenon that you're familiar with, but you explain the symptoms, and we can put pin a tail on that donkey pretty quick. So.
We can, but we've had some where it's been multiple phone calls, and we're happy to take those multiple phone calls because we want to help you along the way.
For sure.
Because we're honestly, every system is different. Like, there could be something missing. There might be something piped in and around something somewhere or
a check valve in the wrong
valve in the wrong place,
or a check valve that's stuck. Swing checks that stick closed all the time.
I mean, we've had it where we've had to walk guys through multiple phone calls, and then we finally get it, or we don't hear anything back.
Right.
And then it kind of piques our curiosity.
No news is good news, Greg. Don't.
I know.
Well, we try to follow up on it as much as we can. And most of the time they've got it figured out.
But no, that's really the advantage to giving us a call right away, because think about the time involved to go get a different mixing valve, to switch it out, to have it still happen again, to now run and pick up a third mixing valve, to change that out. Your customer loses confidence. It's like, you could call us the first time. We'll walk you through and ask you questions.
We used to do the same thing when we were in the field. I used to tell guys all the time, if you can't figure it out and really nail it down as far as what the problem is within a half an hour, you need to be calling somebody.
Right. Yeah.
And that is the greatest thing, like when I started doing service work, we didn't have company cell phones. We had CB radios.
I know.
And nowadays it's like everybody's got this, full blown computer in their pocket. Take pictures, send pictures, give us a call, check our website,
Absolutely.
Whatever. It was just revolutionary when we started carrying around smartphones, that how much easier and how much more information I could have readily available, and so there, the idea of going back and callback after callback because of something that you're unfamiliar with, it really is something that can be mitigated for sure.
Right.
We've taken them calls where,
and we're happy to.
Oh yeah. But, we're happy to take them, but it's kind of a bummer when we hear from the guy on mixing valve number 2 or number 3. And, this just keeps doing it. Okay, and you keep replacing the valve? Yeah, it's got to be the only thing. And then we're kind of reverse engineering things and talking them through what's going on. So, again, as soon as a problem arises, just give us a call.
Yeah.
We'd rather hear from
pictures. We love pictures.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
They're worth 1,000 words, but in our world, they're worth 1,000,000 words because,
absolutely.
It's great. Again, we've got this little computer in our pocket. You take the pictures, you email them over, you text them to us. We can say, hey, wait a second. That's not where it's supposed to be. You need to move that check, or maybe the check's in backwards or whatever. There's a lot of different scenarios. But the other cool thing with Recirc Creep is that, because ASSE 1017 doesn't require you to completely shut off the hot inlet port, doesn't mean you can't. Right. So we do have actually some mixing valves that can completely close off the hot port that will completely eliminate Recirc creep, which is really awesome. And so we've got 2 different models. We've got our angle mix, which is, I think, a revolutionary product as far as mixing valves, because the valve body, the connections are angled. So it's not a cross type of a valve anymore.
It's a pretty sweet little valve.
It makes piping a lot easier.
It makes piping so much easier.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a great valve.
Yeah, and we've got that available 1/2, 3/4, and 1 inch, which is going to be great for a lot of your small residential, like commercial type stuff. But then we've also got our Legio Mix, which our Legio Mix has been just an absolute awesome product for us the last handful of years. That is a digital mixing valve, and it's using actually a 3-way ball valve assembly. So being a 3-way ball valve, it does have the ability to completely close off, bubble tight even, on the hot or cold, which is awesome.
Yeah.
It's been a great product.
It has. It's been very popular.
So yeah, I mean, like I said, we take a number of calls about it. We want to make sure everybody stays safe. We want to make sure that you're understanding what's going on. And again, this isn't just a Caleffi issue with Recirc creep. This is every manufacturer of mixing valves. So if you ever see a mixing valve diagram, a piping diagram that says that they require an aquastat, that's probably because they're just trying to cover their rear ends.
Yeah,
a little CYA never hurt anybody. I'm sure the lawyers added that one. But with that in mind, there are means of being able to run constant recirculation without running into creep. So definitely, if you're looking for more information, let us know. And the other thing too is, in this day and age, putting an aquastat on a recirculation system is a terrible idea. You know, we read more and more about how Legionella and Legionella bacteria and Legionnaire's disease is becoming more and more of an issue. And by turning off that recirculation system, you are turning that big giant distribution system of domestic hot water into a giant petri dish. Okay?
Absolutely.
And that's what Legionella bacteria wants. It wants that stagnant, warm water in order to breed and thrive and everything else. And by keeping that recirculation on, you're lessening the chance of Legionella bacteria happening. And so you want to make sure that that stuff runs pretty much continuously, but obviously you want to keep your occupants safe as well.
Yeah, keep your temperatures elevated and keep that water moving.
Yep.
Variable speed pumps have come a long way, and they're pretty handy in these situations.
Yeah, I think aquastats initially was done for energy efficiency, but when you look at the variable speed pumps, you're getting your energy efficiency there, so you get a safer domestic hot water system if you keep that water moving.
Yep,
absolutely,
for sure. And yeah, I think you're hitting the nail right on the head, Dan. The fact that it was done for energy efficiency, but you know, you look at some of these variable speed circulators now and how much it actually costs to run them. It's kind of a moot point. And, you know, granted, it might be code in certain areas. I think it's California is one of them that require aquastats. But in all reality, we all know building code is centered around occupant safety in these buildings. And you know, if we can be energy efficient at the same time, that's fantastic. But I think one of these days, any requirements for aquastats are going to get thrown out the window.
Right. Well, that's great. So this is the 5 Things You Need to Know series. We're going to have a lot of other topics coming up from Cody. You can find those on our YouTube channel.
Yep, and all the other social medias as well: LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. I don't know what others.
Anywhere.
What do the whippersnappers do these days? I don't know.
Tweeting.
I don't
anywhere
tweet,
we can put it.
Okay. But yeah, it's everywhere. So check it out. We're and if you guys have topics you want to recommend too, I mean, definitely reach out to us. We've got a lot of good stuff coming down the pipeline, but we're always interested in making sure you guys get the information you need.
Well, great. Yeah, we'll have you back on with more, Cody.
All right. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Greg. Appreciate the time.
Yeah. Happy to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning in. If you ever need help,
please feel free to contact our tech support team anytime at techsupport.us@caleffi.com.
or call us during our business hours at 7:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Central Time at 414-238-2360.